Three, two, one. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Dickens and Quips, the podcast that takes the po-face out of poetry. Join me, Dee Dickens, as I wander around showing you a world that isn't only populated by old dead white men. This week, and I would drum roll, I got nothing to drum on, but I have Connor Sansby with me. You might want to hit pause and make yourself your preferred beverage, because when me and Connor get together, we end up talking about all sorts. And I'm here for it. And it might be this, I'm warning you, this may be a long episode, but stick with us because you will probably learn stuff and you might have stuff to contribute, which we will always be happy to hear. So first, the official bio, which I have to say is the shortest one I've had yet. Well done, sir.
I've got notes on that.
You got notes?
On bios, yep.
Yep. Okay, Connor Sansby is a poet, author, festival producer and editor-in-chief for Whisky and Beards Publishing. Since 2013, Connor has performed across the south of England, including Margate Soul Festival, Wise Words Festival and London's Let's Kill It, which is such a Connor thing to perform at. You'll find out. His work touches on themes of cultural waste, depression, and the uncomfortable in the everyday. In 2016, Connor released his first short story collection, I Am Not a Well Person. His first collection of poetry, Promise Me the Journey Back, was released in April 2018. Say hi, Connor.
Hello.
Yay, I'm so pleased to have you here. As ever, good. What the bio doesn't say is what Connor means to me. It feels like we have already known each other forever. But in reality, it's only been since March. He's my publisher, which is very exciting, which is great because I've got my publisher this week, I had my editor last week, and next week I have another Whisky and Beards member of the cohort, Sadie Davidson, on. So this is like
such a talented group,
and such a lovely bunch of human beings. This is the thing.
My biggest thing when I get someone involved in Whisky and Beards is, are they a nice person? Are they going to cause me hassle? And are they good? And if they hit both of those things, then I'm like, yeah, cool, perfect fit, I love it.
Excellent. Plus we can ring each other up and talk about things like bears and hippos for hours, which is always good.
Well, I really hate the idea that some people have got publishers where they're they have to defer to them and they're their boss. I'm like, no, screw that. If you're publishing, if you're a publisher, you need poets as much as they need a publisher. It's a mutual level. It's the same level because you both need each other. And
Absolutely.
Then if you both need each other and you're working together quite closely because you're dealing with intimate stuff, poetry, then why shouldn't you be friends? Why shouldn't you be able to talk about bears and the ridiculous amount I spent on whiskey recently,
Exactly. I have the same thing with Lysnoweth. I mean, I'm in the same position as you with that, where I'm handpicking who I'm publishing. And it's the way to go. It's absolutely the way to go, because a publishing press, I've discovered, and I think part of being part of Whisky and Beards has actually encouraged me in exploring this, is like a family. It's not just about the business of publishing books. It's about making a connection with people and helping them make connections with other people, and then getting other people involved, and then suddenly you're sharing beautiful words and having long conversations about bears and whiskey.
I've always thought that Whisky and Beards is a collective that generates books rather than a publishing company in a traditional sense.
Yes.
So I really love seeing when people pop up and hey, we're going to collaborate on this project, or when people come to me and they're like, hey, I've got some work that I want to put through the Arts Council and I need these kind of people. And I'm like, well, you realize that so-and-so is an expert in this, so-and-so is an expert on that.
Yeah.
One of the people on Whisky and Beards at the moment, for example, is putting together their first hour-long theatre show. And they were like, oh, I really need someone who can book theatres. I'm like, well, we've got Steve Todd, and Todd and his wife Melissa run a theatre company that did a national tour. So I'm like, if you're going to talk to someone about booking theatres, look who we've got in the family right now, and you know they're a good person because like,
they're in the family.
Exactly. Like it makes life so much easier as well. Like the more things that are like, you know, not necessarily in-house but on the same street as you, the better. Like
absolutely. I mean Connor also produced my show that I did last week, How Society Fucks Black Girls and Tells Them They Like It. And I have to say, thank you for not going, oh, for God's sake, Dee, like tone it down when that was what I said I wanted to do. But
I mean, so I am a big white dude, and you know, regardless of any of my intersectionality like points, you know, when someone comes to you and says, hey, I'm talking about race or gender, or the best thing I can do is shut up and let them present it in the way that like actually they want to express it in, because it's not up to me to say, I think you shouldn't use vulgarity in this. No, you're angry about the thing. Be angry. That's what swear words are for.
Yeah. Absolutely, they are. Yeah. I'm gonna have to put an explicit content on this one. I've never had to do it yet.
I've really been trying not to swear so far, and then like you said it,
I normally let like one might slip during an episode, but fuck it, I'll stick explicit content warning on this one, and like, people will have to confirm that they're 18 to listen to it. I'm sure that it'll be fine.
Come on, we're writers. To not use swear words is to limit our ability to express ourselves through language, and that's censorship. Fuck censorship.
You know, people say like, oh, you're a writer, you must have an absolutely massive vocabulary. Why would you use that word? And I'm like, I am a writer. I have a massive, huge vocabulary, and I have decided out of all the words I know, that's the one I need.
Yeah. If someone says, how do you refer to that thing? And you use the name for that thing, they're not going to go, oh, well, you shouldn't have used that word because there's a much more technical word that you could use. Bollocks to that. That's the word.
It is. Right. It's the word. It's absolutely the word. And yeah, the first time I performed at Uni Slam, I used the C word. I said, you shouldn't call my vagina a frou-frou, you should call it a cunt, not a front bottom.
One of the oldest words that we have an attestable history to. It comes from the Proto-Indo-European CWM, quim, which obviously quim, and queen, meaning obviously the highest ranking woman in a country. It's literally one of the oldest words that we have. And to like put it as this thing that's like the height of vulgarity is just absolutely ridiculous. A friend of mine on Facebook was actually talking about they have a workshop called How to Swear.
Well, there is a rhythm to it, isn't there?
Yeah.
There really
it's the George Carlin thing, isn't it? The 7 words you can't say on TV. And he's like, but they're all great.
They are. Great words. It's just such a shame that George Carlin stole everything from Lenny Bruce. Don't start me off on that.
Yeah.
A bit like when people go, Dennis O'Leary, I'm like, oh, you mean like the Liddell's version of Bill Hicks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But nowhere near as good.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right, see, we've got into a conversation. I hadn't even finished my intro. I knew this was how it's going to be. So I am going to finish this intro if it kills us. Cool. So where had I got to? Oh yes, my publisher performed many of the shows I've performed, including How Society Fucks Black Girls and Tells Them They Like It, and many, many shows I've done for Winchester Fest. The fact that I actually have, I think, the wherewithal, the confidence, and the technical know-how to do a podcast now, I blame entirely on getting involved in Winchester Fest. I think what we did there was something absolutely phenomenal, and we changed how poetry is accessed.
I'd like to think so, yeah.
It was a big thing. People go, oh, so you can do like poetry readings on Zoom? Oh, hell yes, you can. In fact, have a look at Winchester Fest. That was 102 days.
Yeah, 80,000 unique viewers. To that. I mean, it's not the same as doing it in person.
No.
But you know, what have we done for accessibility to people who have disabilities, don't let them leave the house, parents who can't get out because of their kids. You know, I think that going forward, the new normal should be live gigs, hybrid models, and online stuff. We should be doing more, not less.
Absolutely. In fact, why are we not already streaming live gigs?
Well, this is the thing.
This is the thing. Unislam are doing it now. I mentioned this in last week's episode, that for Unislam next year, what they're doing is we're sending in videos for the preliminary rounds, and those who are in the semi-finals and then eventually the finals will be still going to Birmingham, performing in a socially distanced way, still in the space that we always do in the Patrick Theatre at the Hippodrome, and it will be live streamed.
That's it. I've been pitching to people that, like, if you normally charge £5 to get into the gig, why don't you set up a live stream and put £1 on that?
Yeah.
Or pay what you feel like access to the stream, so that number one, you're covering your like tech costs that come involved there, and you're still saying that people should pay for poetry, but you're also making it really accessible for people who, you know, can't get out to that gig. And plus, you can fit more people on a live stream than you can in a venue, especially a poetry venue.
Exactly. I mean, I have to say, the meme that's made me laugh the most over lockdown is like, no more than 6 people in one place. I'll say you can still do spoken word gigs then.
Yeah.
6 is double the audience some people get. I'm like spilling some. That's the tea here, folks. So I'm very, very, as you can tell, I'm very bloody excited Connor is here. And this is going to be how this goes. I'm going to say stuff. He is going to say stuff. We're going to end up giggling and swearing a lot. So I hope you got yourself a nice brew before you sat down and started. So this week we'll do the formatty stuff first. Because I know my Roger, my faithful listener Roger, he does like that it's structured. So this week I have been mostly reading Chick by Hannah Lowe. It is an amazing look into what it means to grow up as a mixed race child of a mixed race father who is also largely absent. My dad isn't mixed. Well, I suppose he is, because to be honest, everybody in Trinidad's kind of mixed because of how slavery went down, and then how religion went down, and then how everybody wanting Trinidad because of its proximity to South America went down. But he is Trinidadian. He's from Trinidad and Tobago. But I really did identify with the themes in this collection. It's beautifully and at times almost painfully written. There are sharp edges to these poems. I really do suggest that you give it a try. It hits home for me because in this book, Hannah Lowe is talking about her feelings after her dad died. Now, it's hitting home for me because my dad's getting old. He's in his 80s. Well, and bearing in mind that that's practically adolescent on the Trinidad side of the family, and he could have another 30 years in him. Yeah, I am not even joking. But this year, especially this year, it's dawned on me that life is short isn't just something I say to justify having another shot when I should really switch to water. The poem I'm reading from this collection is called 3 Treasures. And it is about being mixed from 3 sides. Her mum's English and her dad is half black and half Chinese Jamaican. So this is 3 Treasures. Jamaica in the attic in a dark blue trunk. Sea salt in the hinges. What must it look like, all that wide blue sea? England downstairs in a rocking chair, Nana rocking with her playing cards, cigs and toffee, tepid tea. Jamaica frying chicken in the kitchen, pig snout in the stew pot, breakfast pan of saltfish ackee. China in the wonton skin, gold songbird on the brittle porcelain, pink pagoda silk settee. Jamaica in the statues, lignum vitae heads of dreadlocks, Anansi, rebel spider in the storybooks, the poetry. England eating peaches on the patio, hopscotching, Mum in wellies, secateurs around the rosebush and the raspberries. England painting midnight with a sparkler, cousins throwing Guy Fawkes on the bonfire, orange ash confetti. England for the English in graffiti on roundabouts and bus shelters. Please, sir, on TV. Jamaica on the phone at 3 a.m. My father's back home voice through fuzz and crack. My friend, long time no see. China in the Cantonese he knew but wouldn't speak, in letters stuffed in shoeboxes, ink stick calligraphy. China in his slender bones, in coral birds of stitched bamboo. China in an origami butterfly that flew. So that was Three Treasures from Chick by Hannah Lowe. Oh, you're right, Con.
Yeah, I had to cough at one point during that, and I was like,
no, must not cough. And I loved that because it was just so. It was like the butterfly flitting from one thing to the other and resting sometimes upon things. It wasn't Jamaica, China, England, Jamaica, China, England. There was, it was
way more unified than it could have been.
Yeah.
I really like that it wasn't just the cultures mentioned, but like personalities that derive from those cultures.
Yeah.
From an immigrant sort of standpoint. You know, there are personality traits that come with us through our sort of like the blend of our family heritage that like I really love when that's spoken about, because sometimes these cultures that make us up aren't always visible, or they're not something that we like fly the flag of, but there's still a little like brick within the wall of you that is, you know, like there's a little brick in me that says Inuit and another one that says Jewish, but they're not like things that I go out and say like I am a, you know, an Inuit Jewish. Like the only nationality that I ever really embrace is Scottish, because, you know, big ginger beard, it's hard to hide. But you know, there are things that are drawn from there that come through like family members that I can go, oh, you know, my mum's this way because of my nan was this way because my grandnan was this way, and that means I'm this way because of the reaction to each other. I love that.
It's great, isn't it? And the other thing that occurred to me was I hadn't thought ever about my dad's back home voice. And my dad, right, is a barrister, and he sounds like Trevor McDonald.
Yeah.
Like he proper sounds like Trevor McDonald. It's scary sometimes. I'm like, Dad, when he's on the telly, if I can't see him. But when he's back home, he uses words like liming, and he uses like patois words, and he'll say things like, I don't know, ardo bread instead of hard dough bread. And it's like, I love it. I love that he does this.
There's an element of class in it as well.
Yeah. Though he is, even in his own country, he is a man of much renown. He is a very respected man. He qualified here, and then he went back to Trinidad and set up his own practice. And then he worked. He was the DA in Trinidad. Wow. Yeah, he was. Yeah, he raised very high. They offered him the position of being a judge, and he said he'd be bored. So this is my dad, right? And no idea where I get it from. No. So even with that, he still will talk like a country boy sometimes. When he thinks no one else is listening, he'll still speak like a country boy. And I think there's going to be a poem coming out of that at some point.
There's a few friends that my Phoenician slips out around.
Yeah.
Normally, I like to think I'm quite well spoken. I got a lot growing up. Oh, he don't have talk posh, doesn't he? Because South London's beach like holiday, and that's like what built our culture. It's why we don't have the Kent accent. We have a South London accent here. And yeah, there are a few friends, like my mates who grew up on council estates, And when we get together, gradually you start hearing us drop T's, and like TH becomes F's, and it gradually goes through, and then by the end of it, you're like, yes, bud, fan it. And
fan it.
fan it. It devolves like gradually, and we become more and more ourselves. Really.
It's hilarious. I mean, my kids are mostly Birmingham. I mean, James was born in Hastings, but he's lived in the Midlands for most of his life, like apart from the first 3 months.
Mm.
And they would come down to Worthing every summer and spend the summer in Worthing with me. And it'd be like, and they go back, and people would say, "Where have you been?" And they'd be like, "Worthing." How what? And it's like, so how is your mum? How old is she now? 30. These little brummies with their mad southern accents.
Yeah, it's amazing, like who we are when we're able to be our most true selves around other people.
Yeah, it is. And plus, I mean, I have the whole echolalia thing going as well because of the autism, and it's I pick up other people's accents really easily and find myself mirroring them, and it has got me into trouble once or twice, but people understand who I am now.
My granddad moved to Devon when I was like 8 maybe, and I like instantly developed a Devonshire accent.
Yeah,
or it's like the pattern of, and then when he'd come down here and my mum would be talking to him, she'd start doing it, and I'd be like, "Mum, you realize like you've got an accent from someone who's picked up an accent, like do I?" And then the next year she's like, "Oh God, gotta do." Yeah, we just all pick up accents. It's really
great.
like,
but it makes life fun, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, especially
but it's got to the point where I don't know what my actual accent is.
No.
What my accent is when I'm being my true authentic self, I'm not sure. I think it's this, but I don't know.
No, I know that mine is a mix of watching Open University and Margate in the 90s, Council Estate, like stuff. But which one is like, which side of that is actually me, and which one am I putting on?
Yeah, it's weird.
I think people from mixed race households, I mean, I'm talking for them, I'm not them, might have a bit of that comes from like where their heritages are. I
mean, there is this whole like code switching thing, isn't there?
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, there is the whole code switching thing, and I was listening to a podcast, Ology's podcast. I'm going to pimp someone else's podcast because it's fantastic. It's like you download a different special interest every week and just dive in. It's great. But they're talking about how this disadvantages children from Black backgrounds because they're essentially being taught in a language that isn't native to them. So whereas the white kids are being taught in a language they speak fluently, that the Black kids are speaking like African American and English.
Yeah.
So it's two different things. It's fascinating. I'm going to put a link to that episode in the show notes, so anybody who wants to hear it can. My poem of this week that I am reading is, because I've been talking about my dad, I'm going to read 18 to 10. And I did read this on How Society Fucks Black Girls, and I'm really quite fond of it. It's one of those ones that I've not edited a single word on. It just came out fully formed. So it's obviously been in my head a while. So this is 18 to 10. My dad used to say he worked 18 to 10, twice as many hours as everyone else, as it took him more brain power to get through a day that always started with the same shouted joke. "Looking browned off today, Lloyd?" If I didn't pretend to find your casual racism funny, I would never have anyone to talk to in the office, would never get promotion, never get a moment's peace, I would never get the job in the first place. If I didn't chuckle and say, "Ha ha, yeah, good one, we are all," insert stereotype here, I would stand out. I would stand out as the Negro. I would stand out as the uppity Negro. I would be the black girl with the chip on her shoulder. I would be the one who has no sense of humour, no bants, no crack, no sense of humour. I would be the one who had to watch yourself around. Ah, careful now, she'd be off to HR, that one. No, you cannot touch my hair. So I chuckle at your jokes and give it back, but not as good as I get. As good as I get would destroy you. At the cooler, I might ask you if water wasn't a bit spicy for you. How hard is it for you to find underwear an extra small? Go on, Karen. Show us your white girl dancing. Must be great to have that little rhythm. What does every recipe in your cookbook say? Boil it. Get it? She doesn't mind. It's one of us, really. Head in the clouds. You busy thinking of all the countries you want to invade and rape? So yeah, so that's 18 to 10, and it takes a bit of a turn, and I make no apology for that. And I wrote it basically when I was at my writing group and we were talking about race in the workplace, and somebody who I won't name said something along the lines of, well, we've got a black guy out at work and we do give him stick, but he doesn't mind. He gives as good as he gets. And I was like, I promise you he don't. I absolutely promise you he doesn't. And the whole looking browned off today, Lloyd, is a true story. My dad worked for the civil service in Haringey for a long time while he was studying, and every morning, looking browned off today, Lloyd. And it kind of goes hand in hand with what I was just saying about having to spend more energy learning an entirely different language to be taught in.
Yeah, I don't think people realise how draining the cis white heteronormative world is.
Yeah,
don't fit into that bubble. It's absolutely draining. Like, why would anyone willingly subject themselves to it?
Right. It's all the little microaggressions as well, that a lot of the time people don't even realize they're performing, and because they don't realize they're doing it, when you point it out they get quite upset. Well, that's fine, get upset and then examine your behavior and change it. That's it. That's absolutely it. So we are at the point of the show that I really love. Makes me smile every time. It's the guest interview. I really do need a jingle. I'm going to go like guest interview. Here's Connor. So I'm going to ask you a few questions now. So the very first one is just the one of little or no import. Why is poetry important to you?
Poetry is really important to me because it was there when I really needed something. I didn't go to uni to do literature. Well, I did at one point, long story. I reached my lowest point mentally, and it was like my last ditch attempt to do something was to start a publishing company, and I got involved in the poetry scene, and suddenly there were people who kind of got some of the stuff that I was trying to deal with, and gave me an opportunity to pick apart what was going on in my head. That nothing else was there for me. It was poetry that was there because of the community, and that's why I spent a lot of time dealing with community stuff within poetry and doing analytics of and career progression stuff, because I want these things to be I want the community to be richer, so someone else who's in that boat that I was in can get that. It's this one time when everyone has to shut up and listen to you talk about something, and if you're dealing with depression, anxiety, you're used to the world talking over you, and
Yeah.
it's just an opportunity for, I'm going to get up on stage, I'm going to talk about how I feel, and you're going to sit there, you're going to listen, and then at the end of it, you're going to give me at the very least a nice polite golf clap. Absolute
Right.
minimum you're going to give me. That is the minimum amount of respect you're going to get when you get off, like when you finish a piece, is you're going to get and normally you're going to get way more than that. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I need applause in my life, but at the same time, if we could, like, when people came to you like as a friend and were like, hey, I'm really struggling recently, if the first thing that you could say is thank you for coming to me, that's an incredibly empowering like thing in the process. And yeah, poetry delivers that as like default every single time. I love it.
Yeah, it does. I hadn't even thought of it like that.
That's a really nice thing as well.
Sorry?
It also pays my bills, so
Well, I've yet to get to the point where it pays my bills, but honestly, I'm a poet, so I expect to die poor.
You're a student right now, like
I am, yeah. I am a student right now, and about to sign up for another 6 years, because of course I am. So yeah, that's actually a really good way of looking at it, because you might not need the applause, but it is really bloody nice to have some validation.
Yeah.
And especially, and I think what happens there as well is a mutual exchange.
Yeah.
Because not only are you being allowed to speak, but for those who haven't got to the point where they can write it or say it,
yeah,
even hearing that somebody else knows can be really important to people.
Yeah, I mean, even if you have been up on the stage and you talk about it, and then someone else comes up and they talk about it as well, you think, hang on a minute, you know, I'm not alone in all this. It's why I really hate when people are involved in the poetry scene for themselves. Or when I hear people talk about poetry and they talk about like, oh, every time I do the piece, I leave a little bit of the pain behind. I'm like, well, you just trying to treat the audience like a therapist.
Yeah.
I've always said dialogue. It's a dialogue because it's not just about performing, it's about listening as well. Every single time. I get more ideas for poetry on the way back from gigs than I do like any other time, because like even more than a performer of poetry, I like to think I'm a listener of poetry.
I'm a lover of poetry. Alex Carver, you know Alex. He has a poem called The Letter T, about his experience as a trans man. And he performed that at Unisam. It's on the internet. I'm going to link that as well, because there's a link to that. He performed that wearing a 3-piece suit, looking dapper as shit, in front of Travis Alabanza.
I fucking love suits.
It's like I still get goosebumps even thinking about it. And I asked, and that poem I personally needed to hear. My daughter personally needed to hear. And I am certain that there were other people in that room who personally needed to hear that poem. So it's the being seen, it's not feeling invisible. And when you live life in the margins, it's important.
Yeah. I think it's part of why poets on the whole these days tend not to be like just straight white dudes.
Yeah.
It's a more diverse scene than it's ever been from the 80s onwards. Yeah, and I think it's because the live aspect of poetry started to become a really big thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's had just the most incredible knock-on effect in who is in poetry now. And I think when people look back in 200 years of poetry of the last like 30 years, 40 years, they're not going to be saying dead white men.
No. And this is one of the main reasons I set up this podcast, is because people would go, poetry, boring. And it's so not. It's absolutely not. And you're talking about like it being a diverse space. Right? Talia Stitcher has is like the most amazing, wonderfully queer poet who's doing amazing queer poetry, who has a poem called My Team Is So Gay for Your Team, and includes the line, my team is so gay, no really, most of us are queer. And it's just it. She's doing amazing work. I so want to get Talia on the show. By the way, she's incredible. Raina Griefer is writing stuff about trauma. We got Flo Cornell writing stuff. We got what's her name? Damilola is writing stuff about having a smear test.
I am one of my big hats. I run the Bookie Slam, like
Yeah.
championship, and they let me pick out I run the gig. I get to pick out headliners, and they're like, pick out whoever you think is going to be the best headliner. And so far, every single time, I've picked someone of color because of the representation aspect, but also just because so many of the best poets in the UK right now happen to be people of color, queer people. They happen to be othered. And I tell you what, we get people come to that gig who don't come to poetry events because they've seen themselves on stage, on the flyer, like up there. And it's absolutely incredible. And there's a reason why it's the biggest gig down this way. It's because, partly because we're getting people like Inwar Elams and, Dean Atta, Selena Gone, like headlining the bill. But yeah, it's just absolutely incredible seeing a different audience there because they're on stage and because they're speaking to them. I love that I get to be a part of facilitating that. But
I love that people are being really excited about coming on this podcast and like Setra last week, bless her, she was so excited and she just smiled the whole way through. It was lovely being able to do that.
I've got a Facebook message that just came up from her literally like 5 minutes ago, and it says, "I'm really looking forward to working more with Dee. She has really good energy." I'm like, she does.
Yay!
She's the best energy.
Yay! So this is really cool. So next question.
Cool.
Are you writing? And if so, what sort of stuff are you writing?
I am writing at the moment. I'm going really slow. So I did, obviously part of being a publisher, I kind of have to set like the pace for what a publishing poet like does. And I know there are some people who put out like a book every year, but part of me is like, if you put out a book every year, is it the best book that it could be? And that's really what I want to see, the best book. So I spent 4 years on my first book. There's only 2 poems in there from my very first year of like writing poetry. So I spent 4 years on that, and then people were like, "Oh, when are you going to do the next one?" Like a year later, and I was like, I'm still not done touring the first book in my head, but I've said 2023, and I've been saying this for a year. Like, why so long? I'm like, because I want it to be really good.
Yeah.
The first book was the best book I think I could have made at that time, and this is going to be the best book I could have made then. And so what I'm trying to do is, so I come from a town called Margate. I am so Margatonian. It says on my birth certificate, Margate Hospital. Margate Hospital changed its name in like 94, 96 to the QEQM. So just stamping that, Margate Hospital. I get a lot of people go, "Oh, are you from like a Margate originally?" I'm born and bred, born and raised. Like I have been here since 1990. And I'm not saying that London started moving down here because I was here, but I was here first. And yeah, sometimes people forget that like part of the reason London started coming down to Margate again was because we were doing cool things.
Yeah.
Not just you came and then you started doing cool things. We were doing cool things first.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do at the moment, the first book was about my recovery from depression. It was about a relationship that absolutely destroyed me. It's a fictionalized narrative, the last night of the relationship, and like breaking up, going to a bar, getting drunk, hooking up with strangers, and then taking the train back to home, but home being a different place. And you know, it's about the change of like who I was between like 2014 and like 2017 or however it was. I can't remember the years. 2007 to 2010. There we go. But this next book is about how much I love Margate. Like the actual Margate, not the Guardian's, one of the best places to live, top 3 for Londoners to move. It's the actual Margate. It's the You know, liking the pubs that you know that if you go there and you like stand up at a certain time, yeah, I'm gonna get someone to start a fight with you. I kind of like that personality, like in there. You know, so the book starts from the narrator literally washing up on the sea after an attempted suicide, and then what occurs after that is I'm trying to channel like a little bit of Blake here, like the intensity of like color and sight and sound, and have this really textural experience of the place. That's not this clean sanitized version of Margate. It's the Margate that I've always known. And yeah, it's a love letter to the place. So I've said 2023. It's going to take as long as it's going to take, really.
Yeah, it's got to be right.
That's it. You know, if I get 3 poems a year like out of it, but they're all absolutely like, that's it, that's the, then you know, I'm happy to take as long as it takes on it. I want the
whereas me, I'm completely different. I'm the other end of the spectrum, as Connor knows. I can't stop writing.
No, but also with you, there's so many things that affect you in ways that don't affect me.
Yeah.
You know, putting your voice across there is really important to stake those claims. You know, we've got a book on race and a book on autism in the inbox at the moment, and you know, society does not look at me and treat me any differently. I'm not angry about how society looks at me or how it engages with me. I'm a 6'3" white guy. Like, I didn't even realize certain parts of my neighborhood were rough until like someone else pointed out to me, you really shouldn't wear headphones when you go through that part of town. I'm like, really? And then I thought, crap, it's because I'm gigantic. Like, you know, I've got a different experience of the world. So if, you know, if society was, you know, on the off foot from me, then I'd have more to say there. But yeah, anger is the best thing that fuels anything. You know, Johnny Rotten, regardless of all his other bullshit, did put out the best like bit of advice: anger is an energy.
Yeah, there is that. And then he went on to shill butter.
Yeah,
Tory.
but
Disappointment. Interesting story. I met him right when I was 7.
Oh wow.
I met the Sex Pistols when I was 7. My mum used to work at the Finsbury Park Empire, otherwise known as the Rainbow Theatre in Finsbury Park. And she worked there as an usher and couldn't always get a babysitter. So she used to bring us along. We'd sit up the back, watch whatever gig was on, and then go and sit in the green room. Now, we weren't allowed to go and watch them play, but in came the Sex Pistols, while me and my 2 sisters are sat there. So my sister Diane is 5 years old at the time, right? Johnny Rotten comes up to her, ruffles her on the head and says, "You're quite cute, aren't you?" Yeah. And Diane says, "Your teeth need cleaning."
Amazing.
It was at that point I fell in love with Sid Vicious, and that's never gone away. But but yeah, that's my Johnny Rotten story.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things that differs between like me and you as writers is I have no education on how to write, so I have to try like a million things before something's going to stick. Whereas, you know, you're going through the process of actually being like given tools. I have to develop my own tools and stumble across like bullshit and hope that someone who's going through like traditional education on it occasionally goes like, oh, you know, if you tweak it like this, then it...
If you ever sent me your stuff, Connor, I'd be happy to do so.
It'll happen, but I'm very cautious about the process.
Yeah.
And how much of it is me. And at the end,
you
know,
I get it. I mean, whether
it's done.
I mean, Setra loving my energy or not, it's still quite a big deal because this is the first time I've had to give my poetry to an editor. I've never let go like this before. And that's really, really quite something. There has to be, I think this goes back to what we were saying about Whisky and Beards being more like a family. There has to be that trust there.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and that's why it's important that the people that are involved are nice people,
yeah,
because otherwise you can't do that.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, I've done a few writing groups where you do like group feedback, and what's normally happened is I disagree with every single thing that's been said because
You
I'm
know what?
convinced,
That's valid
right?
though.
Yeah,
That's so valid, because there are people who will say to me, you don't want to use the word like ghost, you might want to use spirit instead. And
it's
I'm
not such a
like,
bad word. Oh,
actually, no, for what I want to say, I mean, I think the message there is question your word choices. And that's not that's not an
yeah,
unimportant message, but the way it's delivered sometimes seems so supercilious,
yeah.
and it can really be off-putting. Right, can
The,
we move on to the next question?
oh yeah, yeah, sure, let's go for it. Yeah.
Because we've only done 2 out of the 4. So, okay, so what are you reading in the whole good writers read? What are you reading?
Right now I've got 3 books on the go.
I was going to say, how many books are you reading?
Yeah, normally I have to have multiple books on the go at any given time. I've got really big into creative nonfiction lately,
Okay.
like personal things. So I've just finished off Explore Everything by Dr. Bradley Garrett, which is about urban exploration. He spent like, I think it's like 4 years involved in the British urban exploration scene, and he talks about it from a like an academic point of view. It's not just about like, hey, look at these cool places I broke into. It's about the value of trespass as like a way of reclaiming space within a city. Like that urban architecture is designed to cut you off from things. Like he says there's a whole city above you that you're not allowed access to. So to hop a fence, climb the elevator shaft like on a building site, and to take a look at London from the top of a building that's not been finished yet is an act of reclaiming it. Or like pushing down the fence with a group of people and having a rave on a bit of property that's been deemed private is like super important for that mindset. So I've been reading that. Recently finished that off, and the bit that I've picked up after that is I've got Ikigai for leaders and organizations, which is a westernization form of a Japanese theory about finding balance in your life. It's a blend of like trying to find what is your like purpose and calling, and like find happiness. So it's what you love to do, what you're good at doing, what the world needs, and what you can like make a living from. And the idea is if you've got like 2 or 3 of those, it might be a calling, it might be a passion, it might be just a vocation. But if you can find something that puts you in the middle, then you found like balance and happiness. And apparently you will live a longer life there.
Nice.
Um,
Alternatively, move to Trinidad and the average life expectancy is about 150.
you know, why China and Japan got these great longevities to their people. So I've also got Raymond Antrobus's The Perseverance. Just started that, like cracked the cover on that recently. I started a book club last week impulsively while on a stream. Hey, I should start a book club. So I did. Started it, recommended that everyone go to my local indie bookstore to place their orders, and then realized the next morning, hey, I should probably check that they can fulfill these orders. I was like, oh, heads up, you might have orders for like 30 orders for Raymond Antrobus. I'm really looking forward to that. I really want to encourage more of my friends to read contemporary spoken word and poetry, but it can be very hard to know what to pick up. Like, what's the important things going on at the time in poetry? You know, there's loads of books coming out, more books than ever. How do you pick the ones that give you the most flavor of British spoken word? And
yeah,
something like what are the landmarks that like in 5 years time people go, oh, that book. And I think The Perseverance is one of them.
yeah.
So yeah, we're going to cycle through. Every book has to be picked from the last 3 years.
Nice.
You know, we're trying to go quite cutting edge. So
Do you
it's
know
enough.
how much I had to sit on my hands to not go, oh, I'll get involved in that, because
I
I've
mean,
got that much to read for uni. Right,
yeah,
seriously.
yeah,
It's like I cannot add anything more to the reading. I'm doing a
yeah.
master's in creative writing. I'm reading a book a week for this podcast, and it's like I cannot physically
Well,
read anymore.
what I've been thinking is when we're able to do this in person, there's people on the list who are like up north in Yorkshire. What I was thinking is that we have like a home, like central group,
Yeah.
and so I've picked the first book. Then the next like session, the first person to call out the book that they want the rest of the group to read, we're going to read that group, but then we will tell the other groups this is what we're reading, just so we're all kind of doing the same thing. And hopefully we got Facebook groups so people can like also talk between the groups.
Yeah. Oh,
Hopefully
it
get
sounds amazing.
this community of readers.
And you never know, in a decade when I'm finished with my studies, I might be able to join in.
Yeah, just put everything on the list, like that
Yeah,
comes
everything on the list. Well, this is
yeah,
what actually, this is one of the reasons when I started doing this podcast, I was sort of quite concerned with what the naming conventions for the episodes were going to be. So in the end, I came up with the poet who we've got as a guest and the poet who I'm reading from as the episode name. So then if people want to access that work, then all they need to do is copy and paste those names.
yeah.
So that was really important to me. Right. So talking about poems, who
Yeah.
are you going to read for us from somebody else?
I'm going to read Charles Bukowski.
Nice.
He's one of my favorite writers, if not a terrible human being. The poem that I'm reading is "So You Want to Be a Writer,"
Okay.
which is built on this refrain of "Don't do it." And some people have said like, "Oh, that's a dick move, telling people not to do it." But my argument is, if it takes one person saying, "Don't do it," to stop you doing it, then you don't want it enough.
Yeah.
Or like, don't take it as advice, argue against it. So yeah, that's my pick.
Cool. Let's hear it then. The floor is yours.
So you want to be a writer. If it doesn't come bursting out of you in spite of everything, don't do it. Unless it comes unasked out of your heart and your mind and your mouth and your gut, don't do it. If you have to sit for hours staring at your computer screen or hunched over your typewriter searching for words, don't do it. If you're doing it for money or fame, don't do it. If you're doing it because you want women in your bed, don't do it. If you have to sit there and rewrite it again and again, don't do it. If it's hard work just thinking about doing it, don't do it. If you're trying to write like somebody else, forget about it. If you have to wait for it to roar out of you and then wait patiently, if it never does roar out of you, do something else. If you have to first read it to your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your parents or to anybody at all, you're not ready. Don't be like so many writers. Don't be like so many thousands of people who call themselves writers. Don't be dull and boring and pretentious. Don't be consumed with self-love. The libraries of the world have yawned themselves to sleep over your kind. Don't add to that. Don't do it unless it comes out of your soul like a rocket. Unless being still would drive you to madness or suicide or murder, don't do it. Unless the sun inside you is burning your gut, don't do it. When it is truly time, and if you have been chosen, it will do it by itself, and it will keep on doing it until you die or it dies in you. There is no other way, and there never was.
Woo!
I love that work. I love it as a
Yeah.
starting point to talk about the philosophy of like what it means to be a practicing writer as an artist. And I agree with the libraries of the world have yawned
itself to
sleep over pretentious and dull writers.
That was the line that jumped out at me. It's just the shade.
What I love about Bukowski is he was able to put things across in words that everyone knew. I think if you're using, I've always prided myself on using simple language, and it's not that I don't know big, complicated words. My favorite word is pleonasm, sorry, which is the use of one long word when a series of smaller words have sufficed
Yeah.
itself, and I love that. But it's, if I sit there on stage and someone in the room goes, I have no idea what's been said, that to me is a failing in my craft.
Yeah.
If I read it and people go, I like it because it challenged me, and I thought that because I didn't get it, it was smart, and therefore I should like it because it's smart, which I think happens with a lot of modern TV, then, you know, I've also failed in my craft. If they say it challenged me, but I got there and it was amazing, like the revelation, that's a success.
Yeah.
Like that's the sweet spot.
Yeah. Yeah, funnily enough, at uni, we talk about that sweet spot, or we do call it the sweet spot.
Yeah.
When you do your poem, do people change their facial expressions? When I hear the line about the libraries yawning themselves to sleep, I went, oh, it's like, it's, yeah.
I know you're not supposed to do things for the applause, but I really love clicking.
Me too.
I've just heard a little bit that I like. I know one of the things I always say at the beginning of gigs is, this is a pro-clicking area. I know it's wanky, I know it's bullshit, but we all know it is. It's an in-joke, we're all in together, and it doesn't interrupt the flow. If you like something, just let us know.
Absolutely.
More of that.
The funniest thing ever was at Uni Slam, and I talk about Uni Slam like some people talk about band camp. Seriously, I am aware of this. One time at Uni Slam, I was rehearsing, and my husband is a writer, and he writes amazing urban fantasy horror, like really good. But he's not a poet, and he doesn't pretend to understand poetry. But he came along to support me because he's a good man and a good husband. And and I was rehearsing a poem, and he started clicking. And it completely threw me. Not because of the clicking, but because it was him clicking. I was like,
yeah, I also think part of that thing is poetry as a culture. Like poetry is a subculture. You know, when you get the clicking as a thing that we do, that's when you kind of like got the culture.
And that's the other thing we do is during a slam, in a slam context where it's competitive, we're kind, and clicking is kind. And there is a real kindness about if a poet starts to stumble and forget what they're doing through nerves, and they pause, rather than letting them stand there and drown, you click to fill the gaps. You click to fill the gaps until they can get themselves back together, and then they go in again, and you stop clicking. It's beautiful and it's kind.
One of my favorite human beings in the Kentish poetry scene, Tommy Carver Chapman, right?
Yeah.
He comes from the world of battle rap. He used to review battle rap in London, and you'll like deliver a line, and you'll be like in that like little pause, and you'll just hear him go, let's go. And I'm like, when I hear that, you get a little bit a little bit into it. Come on, like Rocky up the stairs kind of moment. And, it's like this thing. Other people have started saying it now because it just hypes us up. And I did a gig beginning of the year for Faversham Lit Fest. It was a massive gig, 300 people, Luke Wright headlining, absolutely incredible. And there was a review from someone who'd never been to a poetry show, and they said, I thought it was supposed to be a competition, but the poets were the biggest fans of the other poets.
Yeah.
And there's this whole culture where everyone loves each other's work, and I was like, exactly, that is what we're trying to do. And if you can't get poets behind poetry,
what are you doing?
Come on, like, be better.
Like, seriously, when they announced that Bristol had won, you'd have thought Cardiff had won it, because we were going mad.
Fantastic! I want them to win. We
were screaming. There was screaming, there was foot stamping. It's incredible. If you've not been to a live poetry thing, when we are back on like kind of the new normal terms. Listeners, seriously, you have to go. It is life-changing. It is door-opening. It's the nearest I've got to a religious experience. And I know that sounds pretentious and wanky, but
One of the
I
great,
don't fucking care.
one of the
It's
great things about
incredible.
Unislam as well is because of the nature of it. It's a great way to see like what's going on at the grassroots of the scene, to
Yeah.
catch people that in like 5-6 years time are going to be the big tickets like in poetry. Like get in there early, see them like not when they're not as good, because they're fucking incredible and that's why they're going to wake up. But to see them all together and see where it all starts from that's incredible. Like, you know, and if you're a publisher, watch Unislam so you can see who you're going to be publishing in 3 years time.
Absolutely.
Like, come on, do it. I hate when people are anti-slam because they take it too seriously. And there's always going to be one person who wants to like win a slam more than they love their kids, but everyone else is going to be like absolutely in it and enjoying it for the hell of it.
Okay, because this is my bloody podcast and we are already so far over the time we normally take, sod it. We're having a bumper episode and I'm going to, before I ask you to read your poem from you, I'm going to, so you can headline it, obviously. I'm going to read the poem I wrote about Unislam on the way home from Unislam. And they have a thing there where the points are not the point. The poetry is the point.
Mark Smith, the founder of Poetry Slam in Chicago. Yeah.
The points are not the point. And yeah, it's said that many times over the weekend. So this is bonus poem from me. This is Can We Talk? And I haven't read this one for a long while. So if I stumble over it, apologies. Can we talk about how in calling us a community, you mispronounce family? Can we talk about how it is a family you actually enjoy being a part of? Can we talk about a safe space where no one has to wince at an incoming pronoun, where theys and thems roll off tongues belonging to surrogate parents, where acceptance is the default and not something to be prized from unwilling hands? Can we talk about how gender norms are left at the door and the only comments are made are those designed to elevate? Can we talk about the neurodivergence? Can we talk about the neurodivergence, the allowing ourselves to be visible, the allowing ourselves to be, the getting to feel normal, the getting to feel comfortable? Can we talk about feeling at home in a theatre with a family that we aren't afraid of, don't have to hide behind gritted grimaces to escape from, the whiffs of connection between person and person, the hugs and the hand holding where would usually be aversion? Can we talk about the tears shed, cleansing, healing, uniting? Can we talk about voices gone from throats, still circling around the guts of the poet, settling into the flora, fauna, flotsam, jetsam, sinking through skins, becoming part of the whole? Can we talk about the points not being the point? Can we talk about the poetry being the point? Can we talk about how everything that leaves our mouths is now poetry? Can we talk about the permission we gave to be poetry? Can we talk about all how we do is poetry? Can we talk about how I should be studying, but instead I'm writing poetry? Can we talk about how we talk about poetry, vocalize about poetry, snap fingers that hurt so bad to poetry, but still we will do it as a way to take on the pain of the poet, to relieve them of their burden for even a moment, to honor their bravery, their generosity, tell them we see them, we know them, we love them. Can we talk about the family, the collectivity, the connectivity? Can we sit together, loudly or quietly? Can we talk?
Yeah.
That is just, I always get really emotional when I read that poem. So, headlining Dickens and Quips podcast. Connor, what are you going to read to us from yours? And feel free to read more than one because sod it. Let's do this.
So I'm reading a poem that's in my first book. It's called Quantum Love Notes from a Typewriter Attached to a Phone. one of my best mates moved from Margate to the US. It's all really positive, but you know, I do miss him. And you know, we talk a lot. We've got social media and everything, but it was about the artificiality of like online stuff and wholesome masculine friendships, like which need to be celebrated a little bit more.
Awesome. Take it away.
Yeah. So quantum love notes from a typewriter attached to a phone. Sometimes I think I'm writing messages in a bottle made out of ones and zeros, like there both is and isn't meaning behind the words I'm using, and I'm throwing them in an ocean waiting to see if anyone gets back to me. Just because our social media says we're in sync doesn't mean we can feel each other across this distance. But when we stay up all night sharing pictures via Wi-Fi of our pajamas, it seems like the whole wide world is just another big round zero, and we are two ones on different points of its curve. When I was at school, I was told that an infinite line with a slight bend would eventually come back round and touch itself, but the phone lines between us have been broken by satellites. So each time we say, I miss you, it is literally a voice from heaven made up of ones and zeros, like there both is and isn't meaning in this. I think right now where we're doing a lot of things digitally and we're talking about like being isolated and connection in different ways, I feel like it's taken on a bit of a new meaning.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And there's not enough poetry about platonic love.
Yeah,
There really isn't.
No. Yeah, I'm really glad to see that my mate is like thriving over there, but at the same time, like
miss him.
Yeah. I mean, not to brag or anything, but we are the World Mario Kart Double Dash team tag team champions of the world.
Oh, brag away, mate! Like, brag away.
We are world and of the world because we won twice. Like, and
nice.
Why is it a world title? Because we've put out the challenge internationally, and just because no one's played against us, just because we had the ball, come down to Thanet and challenge us to tag team double dash. You know,
wow.
But we can't help being terrifyingly good. It was a whole thing. That,
I mean, I'm scared.
I mean, you should be. We are fantastic.
I'm afraid.
We started. He was way better as a driver, and I did the item stuff on it. And then we knew that our gaming mates were going to get really wound up at some point and insist that I drove more. And I was really bad at driving, and they knew this. So they were like, at some point, we're going to throw out the rule change, and Connor's going to have to drive, and then we'll beat them. But we knew this was going to happen. So me and him were like meeting up once a week, and I was like learning how to drive in Mario Kart Double Dash and get really good at it. And I wasn't the best driver, but I was like second. So you get like, every other team would have such a gulf between how good they were. But me and Mike, we were both like up there, so we would win consistently. And we'd be like, thank you.
Fantastic.
Suckered them into their own defeat again.
See, is this a thing about Kent men, right? Because like seriously, I have a friend of mine called, I'm going to name you and shame you here, called Al, right? And he's from Bromsgrove. And funny enough, he's a big bloke with a ginger beard too. I think maybe you were separated at birth, but he sounds like Alfie Solomon's off Peaky Blinders. It's hilarious because I do a really good impression of him, and we got drunk one night, and you know, I said to him, "Oh, Al, I do a really good impression of you," and he went, "No one can do an impression of me," and I went, "Well, I bloody can." And he was like, "Actually, that's not bad." So this is Al. The reason I'm comparing you to my mate Al, who I adore, is not just because I adore you both. It's because he is the kind of guy who, when he fancied a woman and she said she liked dancing, went and took secret lessons for 3 months so he could walk into the pub that was their local and spin her around and dance with her.
Amazing.
So I'm thinking this might be a Kent male thing. So.
I mean, look.
Plus, my granddad was from Kent.
Why do anything half-assed when you can half-ass the thing? Like, yeah. Plus, who don't love a surprise? Come on.
Yeah.
Fun.
So yeah. So thank you for reading us your poem. It was beautiful, and I will definitely, obviously, as ever, I will put links to where you can get these in the show notes. That's not a problem, because if people want to be able to read the rest of it, they should be able to easily. That's what I'm here for. So this week, on lines that make you go, "Ooh, wish I'd written that." It's from. Obviously, it's from the book Chick, the collection Chick by Hannah Lowe, and it's from the poem Anna's House. And the line is, "And you, a baby bird, so snappable." And I loved that because there's so much complex vulnerability to it. Normally when you hear like baby bird, you think delicate, beautiful, want to be looked after, vulnerable, but this one's like so snappable.
Yeah, there's a bit more force in that, isn't there?
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of these poems have got very sharp edges. Yeah, I love them. Really cool.
I gave a bunch of my writing to my Prince's Trust mentor. So I went through the Prince's Trust Business Launch Group thing to start Whisky and Beards. I gave my mentor like a load of my poems to read, and they came back and said, "You don't do any happy poetry, do you? Very dark." And I was like, yes, it is.
Yeah. Well, even my happy stuff's quite dark.
Yeah.
but that's fine, because you know what? That's who I am.
Yeah.
And that darkness doesn't define me, but I do define that darkness.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So right. So for Heist Nowith News, Joe, as you know, Joe Thomas from episode 2, and having had his poems read out in here a lot, has a brilliant book out called Cake, Liberty and Other Inexplicable Phenomena. It's a look at autism and asexuality and the intersection between the two, and you should definitely read it. Christmas is coming up. It's very lovely priced at $6.99, and you get quite a lot for your money. So I will put, as ever, I will put links in the show notes to that. What else have I got this week? Hannah Edge, her book is now complete. It's the difficult second album that's going to be the challenge for us, is I think, with these writers. Getting their first book out is great because they've been working on it their entire lives. I'm very much looking forward to what Hannah comes up with next. I think a lot of it's going to be quite dark, but this will be coming out on the 1st of January, and I will be having her on the show in a few weeks. That's really cool. We've got Redbubble merch now. We have sold a t-shirt. Thank you to my daughter person for buying a t-shirt. That money goes straight into the Pay Your Artist budget. In other exciting news, which I haven't told Connor yet, actually, I'm going to do a limited run podcast for those of you who missed How Society Fucks Black Girls and Tells Them They Likes It. It's going to be over 10 episodes, and I have set up the channel for it. I just haven't recorded it yet because I haven't had time. I will let you know how it's going and when that's coming out. So it's the shameless plug time for Connor to do shameless plug. Tell us what's going on at Whisky and Beards. Anything you want. Do you make the world's best lasagna? What is it you do? Apart from like the Mario Dash stuff. We know about that.
So Whisky and Beards has recently been in awards of a £13,000 Arts Council grant to produce 5 books over the next 2 years. Our favourite podcast host is first up on that list, so that's in the editorial process at the moment. We're expecting that early next year. We've also got our second book is in editorial. We've started discussing the marketing for that. That's all really cool. So whiskyandbeards.co.uk to follow like blog posts to go on our store and buy our books. That keeps the lights on normally. Whisky and Beards on Facebook is my preferred platform, but we are also on Instagram and Twitter. Do follow us. There is loads of really cool news coming out soon. This Arts Council grant doesn't just set up like this round of books. It also hopefully creates this legacy and knock-on effect of getting to put out more books in more cool ways. We've got the second version of Lucas Howard's Of Few Words in the pipeline at the moment. It's coming out in paperback. Those of you who've got the limited edition 100-copy hardback will have seen how sexy it is. It's still sexy in paperback.
It's got a real sexy cover to it too.
So Lucas is, he's not only a poet of fantastic repute, he's also comes from a design background. So to get to like actually play with the typography in his book and to do something that was designed for a dyslexic audience was something really important to him. It's the second book we've done that was designed to be dyslexic friendly. We also put out Sam Rapp's The Dyslexic Poets first collection as well. And that was done with a font called Dyslexic, which is meant to be more readable. It's the kind of thing I really like doing, is seeing how you can make books more like accessible for a new audience, and how typography and design become like a whole part of the book. So yeah, follow us on social media. You'll see loads of cool shit that we're doing over the next couple of years. You'll see the artists we've got coming out. We're not ready to announce everyone just yet, so there's some really cool announcements coming there. We've got a whole team that we're looking to announce at the moment. I've been doing a load of grant writing work, so over the next couple of years you'll be seeing loads of massive stuff from the Whisky and Beards family. Like I say, one of our poets is putting out their first hour-long theatre show that's going to tour the country next year, starting at the Edinburgh Fringe. We've got workshops, we've got stuff with our friends at the Margate Bookie coming together. It's a really exciting period of time. On the sideline, I have a whole visual practice that you can like catch up with. I've got some work that I've been making in lockdown. I've got some stuff that's almost ready to publish about bullshit copyright licenses. I've made copyright licenses that are completely unusable, and I intend to use them. So, you know, that's coming out in the next couple of weeks. Copy up and copy down as a thing against copyright and copyleft. So yeah, I'm going to be publishing those licenses for people to use soon. So yeah, I mean, there's loads of really cool shit happening. Like, it's the thing, I'm just so busy all the time doing shit because there's so much cool shit.
I feel that.
Yeah, follow me on social media, Whisky and Beards and Connor Sansby Word Stuff on Facebook.
I will put links in the show notes so you can get to all of that really easily. And I'm not just saying follow Connor because he's my publisher and my mate, because actually it's some really exciting stuff. And he showcases the other poets that we've got in the families, like Sadie Davidson, who we've got on next week. She is doing some amazing visual stuff that's really activism based and around children and hunger. She's just a powerhouse. I adore her, and sometimes I wonder if we're the same person, it has to be said, but I mean, including our love of eating blocks of marzipan. But I am really excited to have her on as well. It's going to be a good one. So there we go. Thank you for listening. I have been Dee Dickens, and you as ever have been marvellous. You can get in touch with the show on dickensandquips@gmail.com or on Twitter and Insta at Dickens and Quips. I am on the Ponty Poet, or Dee Dickens Poet and Author, on Facebook. Yes, I got through it this time without calling myself Pontius Pilate. Please do let me know what's going on in your area. If you want to come on the show, hit me up. That's what Cetra did. She sent me a message, can I come on? And I was not going to say no to that. Don't forget to subscribe so I can get in your lug holes on the reg, as it were. And I'm going to leave you with prompt of the week. This week it is, in honour of Connor, bears are all good boys.
Oh, that's a true fact.
It is a true fact. We haven't even touched on his love for bears, because that'd have to be a whole new episode. I'm not even joking. It'd be a whole new episode. So pop it in an email or send it to us on one of our socials, and we will read it out as what Roger Waldron knows, because we have read one of his out. So it just leaves me to say thank you so much for coming on, Connor. This has been an absolute blinder.
Been a blast.
It has been brilliant, hasn't it? So thank you very much for coming on. Be very good people and try and make good choices. And if you cannot make good choices, then write some really good poetry about them. Thank you very much. Speak to you soon. Bye.